Everyone loves a good shortcut, so today I'm going to share with you 9 flowers that you can plant this year that will seed themselves and grow back again next year without any help from you. Bachelor's Buttons come in a number of different colors, pinks and purples. I've been growing the classic magic blend of purples and whites the last couple of years, but perhaps the most common color is this blue color. Bachelor's Buttons also go by another name, cornflower, and you may have seen the cornflower blue crayon in your Crayola box as a child. When my husband and I were first married and attending the university, we used to walk by this fence that had sweet peas growing all along it. If you let them go to seed, the seeds will drop in place and they'll just come back every year in the same place. You often see them along fence lines. They're also good on trellises because sweet peas are climbers and will grow up to 10 feet long. Sweet peas will produce their seeds in a little pod that looks just like snap peas. So you have to make sure and keep children away from where you're growing the sweet peas, or make sure that they know for sure that those are not for eating. Snapdragons are technically a short-lived perennial, which means that they can survive for 2, maybe 3 years, but the plant slowly weakens over time and eventually will die. So many people choose to grow snapdragons as an annual. And I did have some of my snapdragons make it through the winter and come back the following year, but they also spread a lot of seeds around, and I had baby snapdragons popping up all over my garden as well. If you're growing snapdragons to cut for bouquets, you want to make sure and get a tall variety. There are also bedding varieties, which are for garden borders that will be much more compact. Now, violas definitely are not used as a cut flower. They're just tiny little plants with tiny little flower stems, but they're so sweet around the garden, lining pathways and hiding underneath taller things. Violas are also an edible flower. You can put them in salads or press them into cookies or freeze them in ice cubes. Scabiosa are also called pincushion flower. Scabiosa seeds look like tiny little shuttlecocks. If you can imagine a little game of badminton going on in your garden, you can imagine how easy these fly around your garden. Some seed companies separate the seed out of that little shell. The seeds I got from Floret Flower had just the tiny seed out of the middle. Sunflowers are known for being one of the easiest flowers to try and start from seed. Most children try it at least once or twice throughout their childhood and get some sunflowers growing. A lot of times people grow the mammoth variety, which grows high above your head. If you want to use the sunflowers in bouquets, you'll want to look for varieties that are shorter or branching. Sunflowers are loved by wildlife, and I really enjoyed this last year watching the goldfinches in my garden just sit on top of the sunflowers and fly around eating the seeds, and when they do so, it spreads sunflowers all over the garden to have more for next year. Larkspur comes in a lot of different colors. I grew this pink variety that had dark pink streaked across the petals, and the name of that one was Splish Splash. And I'm trying to grow some blue larkspur to put in Independence Day bouquets because that is a project goal that I set for myself. Calendula flowers can be used for bouquets, but I don't generally find my stems to be long enough other than a bouquet of a variety of calendula flowers altogether. They come in a lot of variations, which is interesting. If you want to use calendula medicinally, the variety called Rosina is most commonly suggested. Rosina, as in resin, you understand why when you grow them, because the stems, the flowers and the stems have a sticky residue on them. And you can see how that resin would be able to be easily extracted to then use in products. Calendula petals are also edible and can be sprinkled on top of salads. Marigolds are very easy to start from seed. My son brought some home from school last year that they started in class in a little terrarium, and we planted those out all over the garden. To keep producing well through the summer, marigolds need to be deadheaded regularly. It means you pull the shriveled up, dry blooms off the plant so that the plant can put energy into producing more blooms. But inevitably, you miss some, and the seeds will mature in those, and as you pull those and drop them, then they will grow. I had some of the classic orange marigolds planted in my garden 2 years ago, and I got this really fun variation that's self-seeded with just a single layer of petals and with quite a bit of color variation. That's one of the interesting things about self-seeded flowers, is that they will cross-pollinate, and you often will end up with something a little different from what you started out with. Now, if you want any of these flowers to self-seed in your garden, you're going to have to let some of them go to seed. So you're not going to be able to pick every single blossom. But I found with each of these that even if at the beginning of the season I was trying my best to keep up with harvesting every single bloom, that by the end of their growing season, they are producing so many blooms that it's nearly impossible to keep up with every single one. If you want to be growing cut flowers intensively, this probably isn't the best solution for you because the planting is a little sporadic. If you have an area where you're trying to establish a cottage-style garden, these are just perfect for that type of an application. Most of these flowers can transplant pretty easily. Probably off this list, the sweet peas would be the ones most likely to give you problems transplanting. So feel free to experiment with moving them around and putting them in a more desirable spot. Now, some of the flowers off this list are hardy annuals, so many of them can be planted right now in January inside. Check out my video about hardy annuals to see which off this list and many others can be planted right now.